What is creation without time? Welcome. A theoretical problem that has kept me occupied is that I think I accept the Big Bang theory of creation, if only as a metaphor, not least as, despite the claims of some scientists, I don't see this as contradicting the existence of God. After all, something must have created the conditions for the Big Bang. However, I am sceptical that time is indeed the fourth dimension, not least as this would make time the only dimension which only moves in a single direction. And now I've always seen time as a human construct or even a human constraint. So when you put these two views together, it creates a theoretical problem. What are creation and the Big Bang if there's no time? Or at least not as we currently understand it. I was therefore delighted to find that physicists themselves have considered this very problem. What happened before the Big Bang? Relating to my question, who created the Big Bang, is one scientist would use, and that is what happened before the Big Bang. Or as some have put it, what about the Big Bang without a Big Bang? It's my search for the ultimate point of... it is a search for the ultimate point of creation. Now, I may have doubts about the ever-increasing desire for data, and that leads to an understanding of nothing. But for now, let's go with this exploration. Just indulge me. Einstein's general theory of relativity suggests that space-time is malleable, that space is dynamic, expanding or contracting over time. Astronomers have proved that our universe is indeed expanding. But Penrose and Hawkins have found that time cannot be extended back indefinitely. In fact, it coalesces into a point that they call a singularity. Or you might like to see this as a black hole. So galaxies are moving apart, and the radius of what is visible is increasing ever faster. As light is even faster, the speed of light is even faster than the expansion of the universe. Thus, we are able to see more and more of the universe. But the more we see, the more it seems that it simply repeats parts of the universe that are already known to us. That's right. The more of the universe that we see, it's as though it's just showing us bits that we already know about, a repeating pattern, if you like, which sort of goes back to my original comment that the more sort of granularity we have of information, the less we seem to know. Now, there are two explanations for this. The first of those is known as inflation. That the universe was much smaller than we believed it to be. This relies on the concept of there being an inflation of the expansion of the universe, which then slowed down. This is related to my arguments in the holographic consciousness, that we're all entangled via the energy which expanded us apart at the point of creation. Despite finding this very useful metaphor, I have to say I was never entirely convinced by it. The second is that there is no singularity. So if we remove singularity, then we don't need to set a point for creation. But this means that relativity will not always apply. Expanding the idea that there's no singularity are the concepts that looped quantum gravity retains Einstein's theory, but changes the procedure for the quantum level. and see my vlog on quantum for an in-depth discussion of this. Alternatively, string theory suggests elemental particles are one-dimensional vibrating strings. This string theory provides a new constant as strings have finite small sizes. In other words, there is a finite limit on how small or how big anything can be. Furthermore, despite being one-dimensional and having no mass, they do seem to have angular momentum. So quantum strings require additional dimensions, those which I speak of in my understanding of the other dimensions, the Calabi-Yau manifold vlog. The 3 dimensions we are aware of strings moving around in are known as the Dirichlet membrane or the D-brane, and it's believed that our universe exists on this D-brane, which is why we cannot see these other dimensions. Now, you will know that in the holographic consciousness, I take this further and suggest that because of the holographic effect, we're actually only in 2 dimensions. We always see a dimension further than that which we exist in. Physicists believe that as space-time is played backwards, the curvature of time increases before getting to infinity, or the Big Bang, but then starts to decrease. So this leads to 2 theories. The pre-Big Bang scenario, the equations of physics work perfectly well either backwards or forwards, and this would suggest that the Big Bang was simply a period of violent transition from deceleration to acceleration. The pre and post Big Bang universe would be nearly mirror images of each other. This would suggest that a huge black hole actually gave birth to our universe. And the other is the ekpyrotic or conflagration scenario, and this argues that our universe sits at one end of a higher dimensional space and that the hidden brain is at the other end, that these have an attraction with each other, creating cyclical collisions, and this would occur when the forces were at their weakest. The end of the universe. Looking at the future universe, our knowledge is only slightly better known. What we can say is that the Andromeda and the Milky Way will eventually collide. This will produce massive stars, but they're, in cosmic terms at least, relatively short-lived. Gradually these lose momentum and they merge, and at the centre of this new galaxy is a large black hole. Later this sun begins to exhaust its hydrogen. Before its end it burns its helium, becomes bigger and bigger, hotter and hotter, scorching the earth and draining the oceans, maybe even consuming the earth itself. Now we could move to another universe and seemingly have plenty of time, but because of dark energy, distant objects are expanding quickly and the pace is increasing. By the time the events described, we will no longer be able to see another universe with no evidence of expansion. Then red dwarf stars will emerge, but these are likely to decimate any planets orbiting them through solar flares, making it unlikely that life could survive in such conditions. Ultimately, the stability of matter erodes as protons decay and black holes swallow up what is left of the universe, eventually burning out until there is no energy left. But if I am to argue that there is no space-time, then isn't creation and destruction ongoing, i.e. that it's in the present, if indeed we can even talk of a present. This would mean that we're constantly dealing with creation and destruction, or expansion and entropy, and indeed these are the processes which characterise the human condition. In fact, doesn't it describe the human desire to ultimately destroy what it creates? As above, so below. What should be apparent is that the Big Bang Theory is a convenient mechanism for comprehending what are very difficult concepts. In other words, yes, it does explain a lot, but it doesn't necessarily make it right just because it explains a lot. That I no longer see things on a timeline, then everything becomes even more complicated. But this doesn't necessarily mean that it's unreal. It's only complicated because we see things on a timeline. It's not actually complicated at all. It's just how we've been conditioned. I've repeatedly argued that we're engaged in co-creating our reality with God. So without the concept of time, this act of co-creation is the very stuff of creation itself. We're constantly engaged in constructing the universe through our consciousness, constructing a universe of entanglement and expansion. But what am I arguing now? Am I not suggesting that also the obverse is true? That we're constantly engaged in our own destruction? That in expanding, we're pushing towards our own ending? We're constantly pursuing entropy, but in doing so, we're pursuing our own destruction. Indeed, this would be the collapse of the wave function. Now, okay, much of what I've said so far you can just about square with physics, but humour me now. What if love reduces entropy? What I mean here is if we suppress our ego through empathy for everything, that through love we can avoid this entropy and therefore our own destruction. There's a paradox here, for if we reduce entropy, how would we know, as it also reduces information? So that we would destroy the very information of what we were beginning to achieve. But increasingly I'm seeing the universe as somewhat finite. Yes, it's always expanding, but as we reach the edges, we only increase complexity, not actually knowledge. So we increase information, but not our knowledge. Therefore, maybe love is profound, as it embodies the knowledge of God, unconcerned by the human's desire to control his environment, i.e. unconcerned, i.e. that we should be submitting to God or to the universe. This would mean that the impulse to destroy what we create is the ego reasserting itself, its greed, its selfishness. This seems to imply what Kajawans have known all along, and that God has given us the power to create here on what we see as the earth, both heaven and hell. Indeed, Kajawans would argue that we currently live in a hell, a Kali Yuga, if you like, of our own creation. Indeed, one impulse being creation and the other being destruction is very close to many religious notions of good and evil. Well, I hope you've got something from this. I dare say it's challenged many of you, but I hope you understand I've tried to be firm. Yes, some is conjecture, but I have tried to base this on what I can glean as being facts, and I've tried to be fair in presenting them. It's a part of the real magic of Java, which originally I thought would show rituals in Java and would only be cut every 2 or 3 months. But what I decided to do was expand the concept to talk about things of interest. So now it's happening every 2 or 3 days. So if you have enjoyed this, or at least got something from it, if you can pass a comment and hit the like button, and if you've really enjoyed it, if you could subscribe to my channel, hit the bell and you'll get future notifications. And what I want to do is thank you so much in anticipation for that.